Hey folks, back again after about a week. I have a couple of things to update y'all on. But yeah, I finally relocated my camera. I lost that. That was one of the reasons why I wasn't posting. On top of that, I didn't really have much going on. I was just dealing with, stress, anxiety, boredom. You could say a bit of depression. Being back here at my parents' home and just having to contend with the stuff that I, thought I'd gotten away from by moving out of the house. But, I found ways of coping with that without falling back into PMO, without relapsing, just coming out of this park. But anywho, the two big things are that, for one thing, I secured a temporary job for the rest of the summer, and it's a big thing right now because, yes, like I said, it's a temporary job. It's not like a permanent fix, but one of my big stressors as of late has been the whole money issue, and even if it's like minimum wage job, which is $11.50 here. It'd be 40 hours a week with possibility of overtime, which would be a time and a half, 17.25 an hour. It's at least something. I'll be making some cold hard cash, and getting that sort of bit of stress off my shoulders, which will be definitely helpful. And I think it's a quality assurance inspector type job at this skateboard making company. It'll be second shift starting at 2 p.m. going to 11 p.m. So I'll be out of the house most of the day, which will be awesome, to say the least. Because, I really don't like being here. I mean, I moved out of the house and went, hundreds of miles away for a reason. But, I'll at least make it somewhat tolerable, way more tolerable than just sitting around the house all day. And help me cope with the rising desires to PMO, because honestly, just being back here in the place where for some years I was a PMO addict, and getting those same sorts of emotions and falling back into a similar pattern, as opposed to what I was doing up north, living on my own, which is where I went and I broke the addiction. Coming back here again, it's kind of brought those emotions back and the whole patterns, and just the having to contend with the same stressors and the same people and the same problems that I was contending with before. I've had to fall back on a strategy other than PMO, which has been coming out to this park and just sitting here at this table. And it's great to know that, given that I filled all the paperwork, I talked to the recruiter from the staffing agency who finally called me back. Got all that kind of stuff rolling, that I'll be making some money getting out of the house and having some real freedom. Once I'm out of the house, even if I decide to leave an hour or two early, before I would have to leave to be there on time, that gives me a little bit of leeway there. But other than that, I'll be just making some money again to get some of that self-respect back, being able to pay off credit card bills or put money away for rent, or school expenses and that sort of deal. So that's like the really big thing. The other big thing, a little bit less so than that, is the fact that I actually did get off my butt and go running this morning. I only did 2 miles plus a third mile walking, and in reality it was more like I jogged 2 miles. I didn't go too fast. It turns out that the shorts I bought, they're like a size too big. I've gotten used to wearing large, but apparently like my waist isn't as bad as I thought it was, such that wearing like a 38 is actually too big. I have to if I have a 38 waist for jeans, I have to actually wear a belt and tighten it up. And so I guess I'm more on a 36, which is still I want to lose weight and get down to, I think, a 32. That'd be kind of my goal. But I actually got up and went out running, and I put on my shirt, my shorts, my new shoes, and I went out and did that. After I had drank a bunch of coffee, of course. So a bit amped up from that. So this is the two big changes. I'm going to try to make it a point to go out running in the morning just to do that, and I'm going to have to watch my calorie intake. I know that when I have gone consistently running, that my caloric intake has gone down, because most of my eating is not necessary eating. You know, it's really wastage and just overeating, stress eating, boredom eating, trying to cope with that, you know, set of negative emotions, whether or not I'm... Yeah, somebody running by. But, you know, whether or not I'm overeating to cope with stress, anxiety, depression, whatever the case may be, most of the food I would end up consuming, and I see this, you know, because I'll get up in the middle of the night, mostly because I just plain simply can't sleep when I have my mother and my sister getting up and banging around, knocking things over, falling, hurting themselves, that kind of stuff. I end up not being able to sleep at night, and since I'm stressed out and anxious about that, I go to the kitchen and I just, you know, start chowing down on food. And, you know, when I'm living on my own, I don't have, you know, a pantry at the end of the hallway where I can just go and grab a bunch of chips or whatever. I would have to get up, go out on foot, or, you know, if I decide to use my bicycle, I have to go out, you know, on bike or on foot and go to some place like, you know, Jack in the Box or some, you know, late night restaurant and get the food that way. And, you know, I'd be burning calories to get there, burning calories to get back, and I'd have to be timing myself properly so that I wouldn't end up getting mugged, you know. And there's always that sort of deterrent to me going out and doing that, because it's like, okay, it's going to be half an hour, you know, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back. You know, the sun's gone down. Do you really want to risk getting mugged? You know, that sort of thing. And so that'll stop me from doing that. And besides, like, you know, other than stress from school or stress from making sure I can pay the rent on time, it's a relatively low stress environment. I'm not having people pounding on my door in the middle of the night. I'm not having people falling over and, you know, cracking their skull open, like my mother did recently, which I'll talk about in a moment. But, you know, I'm not having stuff like that happen where I'm having to call 911, you know, ride along with my dad to the hospital to, you know, keep an eye on my mom, or, you know, what have you, and then staying in the hospital to make sure that the situation is taken care of, and, you know, my mom's taken care of, and so on, or my sister for that matter. You know, I'm not having to contend with that kind of stuff. So the stress is down, the anxiety is down, the depression is down for the most part. Which isn't to say that there aren't high stress or high anxiety or high depression moments or times, but there's a feeling of like control over it. You know, I can do something about it even in those situations, so I don't end up, you know, eating to cope with that sort of stuff. But I have found that when I do go running consistently, do work out consistently, that my desire to eat, you know, it gets lowered to, you know, closer to normal levels, closer to, you know, subsistence or existence levels. In other words, like, you know, to the point where I'm eating because I have to eat, not because I'm stressed out, anxious, bored, depressed, whatever. So I think that, you know, if I get back into that sort of routine, that will that'll definitely help, you know, towards moderating my diet, losing some weight, getting into better shape over the summer, and just having a better overall mood. So let's see, those two things I covered. I guess since I did mention in passing, because it kind of, you know, was related to or connected to the other subjects that I mentioned, especially the exercise part, I'm going to toss in a third subject, which is the fact that my mom got drunk yet again this last week, and, you know, wandering around the house, knocking things over, waking my dad up, waking me up, waking my sister up. And she eventually tripped, fell, knocked herself off for about half a minute to a minute, opened up her scalp basically on the back. Luckily it didn't go through to her skull. And I found her, after she'd gotten up and was, you know, gone back to her room, came out again, was walking around, and, you know, I got up again to go, you know, find out what she was looking for. You know, of course she's looking for more Xanax, more Ambien, more wine, you know. Even though we were out of the Xanax and the Ambien, and obviously we don't have any more wine. And I found, you know, blood all over the back of her neck. Her hair on the back of her head was, matted with, and, drenched in blood. And I was like, what the heck, you're bleeding, she's like trying to play it off like, oh, it's not that much. And then my dad hears, and he gets up and he's like, call 911. And I called them, tell them to come to the house. They came over, they checked her out. She, at first was kind of, well, some flies around, but anyways, she was first kind of resistant to it, but eventually she just, submitted to, so you could say, to the paramedics, the EMTs saying, we need to take you to the hospital. And so they got her on the gurney and took her there, and I had to spend like about the whole night and into the morning there, dozing off every so often, whenever I could get some sleep, having to sit in the hospital room and let my dad go to work with, again, with zero sleep, as so many other nights have happened with him. He's had to go into work for an 8 or 9 hour workday as an engineering manager with zero sleep because my mom was screwing around again, and screwing around with the alcohol and the drugs, or the Xanax, the Ambien, the legally prescribed controlled substances that are supposed to be only used sparingly so that you can get some sleep, or so you can relax a bit, muscle relax and that sort of thing, and contend with anxiety, that sort of deal. But that's the other thing that happened. I think that's also one of the reasons why I just wasn't posting. I was caught up with that, just kind of like just feeling really frustrated. Top of all the anxiety, the stress, the depression, it was like feeling like being drugged back into the past that I was trying to escape and get away from and get free from. And here's all going all over again. And because I'm not in the best spot financially speaking, having to contend with certain problems in life that I wouldn't have to contend with if I was in a better spot financially. And some of that has to do with my own bad performance as far as grades are concerned, because if I had a higher GPA I could probably get a paid internship up north and etc. But it is what it is, and I've had to contend with it. But I just wasn't feeling like posting, in part because of that, but also because I couldn't find my camcorder, and because I was really focused on locking down that job and just getting myself to a point where I could at least feel by the end of the summer that I've gotten myself ready for success. So I will be ordering some books, basically like a earlier or older version of this textbook, so I can at least come out here and study for an hour or two every day, just make a point of it. But those are the not two but three big things that have occurred as of late. So just an update on my situation. Thanks for watching my videos. Thanks for taking the time out of your life to watch my content. And that's it for now, folks. Bye.